Everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fair Chase podcast. Before we start this episode, we're going to again take a little time to thank a little bit of the people who help make this show possible.
First up is 2O Gear. It's a new brand that we just started partnering with. They make awesome high-end technical hunting clothes, camo. And so they're based in Michigan, and new company. We've tested them for months. I tested them in the whitetail season last year.
Great merino base layers.
Yep, great
awesome
merino
shells.
base.
Awesome new pattern.
A great system for going out west, but we'll use it a ton in the whitetail woods too. So really excited to work with them. 2ogear.com. Go check them out. Next up is Worldwide Trophy Adventures. It's an awesome, basically, connection to outfitters all over the world. So as a lot of people know, good hunting ground is really hard to come by. And oftentimes the best way to ensure that you're going to get in a good spot, or maybe you need to legally have a guide, is to go through an outfitter.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as you might know if you've heard us before, we've had good experiences and bad experiences with outfitters. Which means, in order to ensure you're going to have a good experience, you have to do a ton of research, you have to talk to people, it's just a lot of messing around. Worldwide Trophy Adventures, or WTA, does a lot of this work for you at no charge. So by booking your trip through WTA, you can rest assured that you'll be in a good location with a reputable outfitter that they've certified and endorsed. If you're looking to book a trip of a lifetime like I am, just headed to a moose hunt here through WTA, you're going to want to check them out. Go give them a call. Actually, I have the number right here. It's 1-800-346-8747, or check out their website at worldwidetrophyadventures.com.
All right, so we love Trophy Line. They offer more than just saddles. Believe it or not, they have their own climbing sticks. They've got platforms. They've got a ton of extra
packs.
gear. They've got packs. They've got everything.
Knee pads.
Everything that you're going to need to be a saddle hunter, they have it. So if you want to start saddle hunting this year and get into the game like everyone else and really love hunting even more, go to Trophy Line, check it out, use the code TFC10 to save yourself 10% on that purchase.
We're big bow hunters. Sights, quivers, stabilizers, those kind of things are really important if you're going to have a deadly setup. And so we've tried a lot of different companies in the industry, and we've kind of figured out that we really like Redline gear the best. So we are shooting their torch sights this year.
It's a really cool sight. There's a lot of good micro adjustments you can make. You can customize a lot of the stuff on there. Really make it your own.
The chargeable USB rechargeable light is
really
sweet.
Cool.
And so we're huge fans of their stuff. We use them all the time. It's worth going to check them out. Check out Redline. Use the promo code TFC10 for 10% off your purchase, and let us know what you think. We love them. Everybody, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Fair Chase podcast. This week is a podcast kind of specially recorded for our Michigan listeners, which there are a lot of. We're Michigan based, and so we thought we would bring Erik here on from the National Deer Association, NDA, which is hard for me to get used to saying that instead of QDMA and everything else, but I'm getting there. I know it's been a while. It's still hard to get that right, but before we dive into just today, I wanted to really talk about the state of deer in Michigan, and I think there's some things we can talk about there. But before we dive into it, Erik, you've been on the podcast before, but for people who maybe didn't catch that last episode, do you mind introducing yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am a volunteer with the National Deer Association here in Michigan. I've been involved since the mid-'90s or so. Attended way back in the early '90s, attended a show in Grand Rapids where the QDMA, then about 5 years old, was there, and that got me hooked up to it. But I've become a very passionate kind of evangelist for better deer management in Michigan, and the QDMA, now National Deer Association, is the vehicle for that. So I'm involved with a large deer cooperative in northeast Ionia County, northeast Kent, northwest Ionia County. Red Creek Co-op. I'm involved with a local branch of the National Deer Association, and I've been state president for about 7 years. This year I've transitioned that to Mike Kettlar, who's doing a great job and kind of expanding where we're focusing. I've been focused a lot on advocacy. I'm still there. I'm working now as a volunteer statewide on advocacy for deer and deer management issues, and we'll probably get into some of those.
Yeah, no. I said, I appreciate you kind of introducing yourself. I know you've been at this for a long time, and very, very passionate. And even the emails we've exchanged and stuff is pretty cool. So, we just, I guess, let's dive right into it. So, what is the state of deer in Michigan? Like, what are we looking at? How are things going? Where are we at right now as a state?
Well, it's a complex picture. You can look at this if you're familiar with the Tale of Two Cities book. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. This is you can look at things that the glass half full and the glass half empty. We've got some things that I think are real strengths for Michigan in terms of our deer herd and deer management, and we've got some really big challenges. And
Yeah.
I guess one of the messages I've spent a lot of time on advocacy with the DNR, with the Natural Resources Commission, regulations, but I still think Michigan deer hunters are the key factor here. So,
Yeah.
regardless of what regulations get set, what the DNR says, we as deer hunters have a responsibility to do the right thing for our deer herd, for our sport, and we have control. It's the biggest challenges that we face in this state are challenges that we as deer hunters can address.
Yeah. Without laws,
With
we
yeah,
can
even without
decide.
any regulatory changes, if Michigan deer hunters just say, "I'm going to quit blaming the NRC and DNR, and I'm just going to take action in my area to make the deer hunting, deer herd better, fight disease." You know, it's all about better deer management, and we can certainly do a better job as hunters.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, let's dive into that. So there's good and bad. Tell me the tale of good in
Yeah.
Michigan right now. What
Well,
are we doing well?
we've got a lot of good things. We're one of the top states in terms of number of hunters. Now it's been going down like it has to various degrees in other states as well. For the past 20 years, there's kind of a demographic thing going on, but we've still got well over 500,000 deer hunters in the state of Michigan. That is
Yeah.
a big strength, and that's something. And it's been going down, pretty steady rate of about 2% a year for the last 20 years. The DNR is forecasting by 2030 we'll be down to around 460,000 or so deer hunters. So it's going down, but you know what? We can turn that around in 1 year if we
Yeah.
want. As we as hunters, if we even 10% of us go out and recruit a new hunter, we will reverse the last 5 years of reductions in a single year.
Yep.
And it's fun. I mean, I've been doing this. That's another thing as part of. I really enjoy this. I've been unofficially with QDMA and NDA introducing new hunters since I got my farm and started doing that. But now we've got a field to fork program where we're introducing adult hunters that have wanted to hunt but just needed somebody to mentor them. It is really fun. At least at this point in my deer hunting, I get as excited. Matter of fact, I think I get more excited. I had a hunter out last weekend, previous to last, that was a field to fork hunter, and I woke up 45 minutes before my alarm went off. I was up at 4:15 in the morning because I was just laying there in bed thinking about where I was going to put them and how we were going to do this.
I
I
love
was
that.
just excited, and so it's a ton of fun to introduce new people to hunting, and it can be through organized programs like ours. But I'd say you don't have to be part of the NDA or Field to Fork. Just I think every hunter has friends that have expressed an interest in it and have wanted, expressed an interest that maybe they'd want to do it. Find those people and invite them to come out with you, mentor them, get them started. I think for the people that, if you can get that flame ignited in them, they'll become lifetime hunters and we can turn that around. So that's just an example, but we've
Yeah.
got a lot of hunters in our state.
So we got a
Another,
lot of hunters. That's a plus.
it's a plus. Another big thing, we've got, we actually have the highest buck harvest per square mile in the entire country. So, and it's not, this past year, I've got the 2023 deer report in front of me. And it's using data from 2021. Um, but we were at, in terms of buck harvest per square mile, 4 bucks per square mile. The closest states to us were Delaware at 3.5, Pennsylvania at 3.2. So we are harvesting a lot of antlered deer.
Yeah.
That's a symptom of the fact we've got a very large deer herd, which can be a plus in in some, and we'll talk more about that. But
Yep.
we've got a big buck harvest. We've got a lot of hunters that love to harvest bucks. We've got a strong hunting culture in Michigan. I think there's the only state that really rivals us is Pennsylvania, the most similar state
Yep.
probably in terms of the densities and culture and everything that go along with that. Another statistic I got from Chad Stewart this year is we're now harvesting about 2/3 of our harvest is bucks with at least 4 points on a side statewide. So that's been a long, slow. We've been well behind other states on that, and we still are. But we are continuing to make progress. More and more hunters are passing the little ones, letting those yearlings go. And in much of our state, we can have some pretty nice bucks at 2.5 or 3.5 years old that hunters can be very happy with. So
Yeah.
those are, I think, positive things we can build on as a state.
Yeah, no, I love that, and the buck harvest numbers with 4 and a side. I didn't know that. What was the number? What was the percentage
About
behind that?
2/3 of the antlered bucks harvested have at least 4 points on one side. So
That's
if we had
fantastic.
so if we had a statewide 4-point APR, it would help. And we'll talk a little bit about where it can help. It's not just on buck harvest, but it would help. But we've made good progress without regulations. And from a NDA perspective, our policy is that we support APRs to protect the majority of yearling bucks, and when it's
Yep.
when it's needed biologically. And I think we're probably getting pretty close. I mean, the DNR doesn't really have numbers on that, but I think we're probably getting pretty close statewide without APRs in most of the state of protecting the majority yearling bucks.
That's
Those are all
fantastic.
good things. And that's cultural. That's hunters making decisions, and I think that's very positive.
All right, we're going to take a pause here real quick and just thank a few more guys and companies that help make this show possible. First up is Vortex. We can't say it enough. We love their glass. We love their binoculars, spotting scopes, rangefinders, their apparel. James is rocking a nice little hoodie here. They make awesome stuff. And if you guys are looking to make a purchase at Vortex, go over to their website and use the code TFC20 to save yourself 20% on the next purchase. That's a big, good discount. Use it. Head over there and get something.
A bow makes a man.
Does
And yeah, that's what I was told. And we're big fans of prime bows. Shooting it for years, Michigan-based company. We're shooting their latest Revix series of bows. Mine's that 36 long boy.
I'll generally take a few shots right back here and just.
Yeah, we're huge fans. Smooth, great balance. They're just go check them out. There's tons of technology. One of my favorite things that they have is their grip. Space age technology keeps your hand warm even when it's cold. Highly recommend. Go check out Prime Archery. Finally, Lathrop and Sons boots. Your feet kill animals. Like the more you walk, the more chances you have at getting that big buck, that big elk, moose, whatever it is. Lathrop and Sons have been kind of our go-to boot of choice for a while now. We've put in a lot of miles, taken them all over the place. There's no leaking. It's comfortable. Stephen and James there they're like foot scientists.
They're geniuses. I got messed up feet, and they basically will, you take an imprint of your foot. They'll look at it, look at your arch, how wide it is, how narrow, how long, and they literally build the boot around your foot. So you're not going to a box store and picking up something that you hope is going to fit your boot. These things actually are tailor-made to your foot. So they're super comfortable. Mine, I could walk all day in them. So if you're looking to get a boot, if you're looking for a boot that's made for you and not somebody else, go check out Lathrop and Sons.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so we've got good tradition. We've got a lot of people. We're starting to harvest the right deer. Are there any other positives, or is it time to jump into the negative stuff?
I think that's those would be some keys, and they're important to keep in mind. And I didn't want to be all doom and gloom.
Yeah,
here.
Sure. Those are good things. Those are actually some of those things are really. I mean, to have that many hunters, that's not an easy thing. To change people in their mindset, especially in Michigan, where we've have kind of a tradition of you just shoot the first buck you see, you're a buck hunter, And growing up, I don't know how many dead, spikes, forks, small 6 points you'd see, and so to hear that, that's not an easy change to make either. So those are fantastic, fantastic things. All right, so let's switch to the flip side then. Where's the doom and gloom in all of this?
All right. I want to do one more positive that came to mind.
Okay, good. Yeah.
And that is growth of wildlife cooperatives and deer cooperatives in particular in Michigan. We don't have an official number at this point, but in 2020, Morgan Warda, who was our co-op coordinator at the time, totaled it up, and we had more official deer cooperatives, more acreage in those than there was in state game areas in Michigan. And
Really?
when you survey those people that are in those cooperatives, their satisfaction with their hunt and things like their antlerless to antlered ratio of harvest is way above other areas in the state. So that's a really positive thing. And we're those cooperatives, while we don't have an official co-op coordinator, the DNR canceled that program. Cooperatives have continued to grow and are making a difference. So, if you as a hunter want to have better hunting in your area, in addition to being an NDA member,
Yeah.
commercial plug, the next most important thing you can do is talk to your neighbors. And actually, the most important thing you can do is talk to your neighbors, whether you're an official cooperative or not, but get together with your neighbors. Even on public land, folks are talking to other folks hunting in those areas of public land on a regular basis. You can make a huge difference.
Well, I love that too, because that's kind of extra governmental, stuff where it's like you're really imposing your own limits on yourself without an external body, governing body, to come in and say you can't do this. Which, given kind of my political leanings and my my just opinion on the philosophy behind how government should work, and how citizens should step up. That's just really encouraging to hear. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. So those are positive. So let's switch to some things that are really are a big concern.
Yeah.
We've got two things going on in Michigan now. Well, we've got several things going on, and they're interrelated. We have in southern, and we need to look at, I think, probably talk about the Upper Peninsula versus the Lower Peninsula.
Yeah.
There's some those are two different worlds. So I'll start with the Lower Peninsula. We've got throughout most of the Lower Peninsula high densities of deer, and really too high densities of deer. And if you don't believe me, just drive around this time of year. Well, actually, the leaves are starting to fall now, but you can see browse lines on all over the state as you drive around, or see how many deer are out in the soybean fields right now. As it's starting to get dark, or first thing in the morning. We have a lot of deer. We've got very high densities of deer, and that is that may at first sound like a good thing, but if you're too high a densities of deer, you end up with things like crop damage. Those crop damage issues have been going up. Auto accidents with cars have been going up. We're at I think the highest level we've been since around 2009, and they've been going up. I had that here in my data, but nearly 20% of recorded collisions with cars in Michigan involved white-tailed deer. That includes deaths, so people are dying. Your reported deer collisions in 2022 were 59,000, the highest number since 2009. And I saw an article a couple weeks ago where we are outpacing 2022. So high deer densities, and then that also plays into disease. So we've got bovine tuberculosis threatening not just our deer herd, but our cattle industry in the northeast part of the state. Hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact there. Could literally put some of our agricultural folks out of business in that part of the state if we don't keep a lid on that and get control of it, stop it from spreading. And then chronic wasting disease, which is continuing to steadily expand. So we just added another county this year, Midland County.
How many counties are we looking at for the CWD?
Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 counties with known CWD in them.
How many? 14?
15 counties.
15. Okay, so
Yep.
that's 15, 83 counties in there's 83 counties in Michigan, right? So that's about almost 20% of our, 18% of our counties have CWD issues.
Yep.
That's concerning.
It's continuing to spread. And it's when you look at both of those diseases, while they're completely different, bovine tuberculosis is a bacteria, chronic wasting disease is a what they call prion, a mutated protein. They're completely different in that way, but they're very similar in that the animals most likely to have it and spread it are older animals. Um, and in Michigan, the predominant, the most old animals over, say, 3.5 or 4.5 are antlerless deer. It's there's still if you get a 4.5 or older buck in Michigan, regardless of antlers, you've done something.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
hard to find those. I've been looking for a long time.
yeah, you can get. I know just on my little 79 acres in Ionia County, I don't think there's a year I haven't gotten at least a 5.5-year-old doe, and the oldest one I've gotten was aged at 9.5. Her teeth were down to just little nubs. Um, so we've got a big issue with densities. So that's disease spreads through density, and then the numbers of older antlerless deer that
Hmm.
are a big threat. So, and to give you an idea, the kind of the scope of the problem here, we are not harvesting anywhere near as many antlerless deer as antlered in the state, and
Yeah,
it's
I just
not.
was looking at those numbers like 2 days ago. Yep, it's
Yeah,
kind of troubling.
I just downloaded the spreadsheet this morning for this conversation from the DNR, and due to this mandatory harvest reporting, now we can. It was great last year, and it's great this year that we can go in and look at this and see where we're at, and it's not good, folks. We're at 0.64 as a state, 0.64 antlerless deer per antlered at this point in the season.
Hmm.
Now that does tend to go up a little bit as seasons go on. There's some folks that put more emphasis on does a little bit later,
Yep.
but we're not doing well. Last year, as a state, we were at 0.76.
Okay.
And I think it's important to look at context on those numbers too. So how do we compare to surrounding states? So Illinois is 1.2, Indiana's 1.2 antlerless per antlered, Iowa's 1.2. Ohio's 1.5,
Ooh.
Wisconsin's 1.1. The general rule of thumb is at least 1 to 1. If you're trying to manage your herd, keep it stable, you need to hit at least 1.1, and we are nowhere close. So we've got these high densities, we've got deer disease, and we are nowhere close to keeping control over our deer herd.
But Eric, we've solved this problem. The DNR gave us more doe tags. Like, isn't the problem? Doesn't that just solve everything? Isn't everything fixed now if they just let us have more? They let us buy more tags.
They did, yes. But the thing is, hunters have to actually go out and harvest does to make that work. And
Yeah.
I'm pulling these stats from Chad Stewart as well. But it was a very, very few hunters actually shoot any doe. So 75% of hunters don't take an antlerless deer at all. Only 17% of hunters take one antlerless deer in a season.
Really?
Yep. And less than 1% of hunters take 4 or more deer in a season. So everybody complains, oh my gosh, the DNR says you can buy 10 antlerless permits, they're going to wipe out all the deer. Well, the numbers don't support that. They really don't. Now, it could happen in a local area, and that's why the NDA, I think, is important with our resources to help you target appropriate numbers of does. But if you get enough people in one area shooting 10 does, that obviously could be a problem. But as a statewide, we are very far from having that problem.
No, I see that though as like, all right, even if like me and my buck. So right now, I think our count is 3 does and a buck between the three of us on at the fair chase. And if you throw in Joe's son, who I think shot 2 or 3 does already, we're there. But my thought is always like, okay, say we do that all in an area, and you all of a sudden there's a lot more resources in our area that deer aren't eating, and so on. And then so eventually something else will move in, and it just kind of fills in. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I've never had the concern where it's like, oh, if we shoot too many does, we'll never see a deer. It's like I've never had that problem. You know?
No, it's actually the opposite. I mean, some very positive things happen when you do what you're doing, which is harvesting does earlier in the season and just harvesting more does than bucks. Um, One of the big things is you're going to see more bucks because they now have to compete for does. So picture yourself if your ratio's way off, if you now got 5 or 6 does per buck, and
Yeah.
those does are coming into heat. That buck doesn't have to roam around looking for them. He's tripping over them.
Exactly.
He might not even have to move at all. He may stay just right down in a little thick brushy area and stay there for a week, impregnating does and never
Yeah.
be subject to anybody's harvest. Never even be seen.
Yeah.
If you can get that ratio down, 1 to 2 is a great place to be. 1 to 1, of course, would be even better, but harder to achieve. But you can get that ratio down. Now that buck's, he's got to get up on his feet. When he gets done with one doe, he's got to go find another one. And so you're going to see more bucks, and they're going to be competing. So now it's multiple bucks competing for that doe. So they're chasing,
Yeah.
and there
Oh
is
man.
so much fun.
It doesn't get more fun. You know?
No,
Well, and it's like
exactly.
if you've ever hunted in a place where that is the case, whether it be a different state or a certain region or property or whatever, and you're seeing like true ruddy activity, chasing, looking for does. It is like you could sit there all day for a week and not get tired of it. It's just exciting all the time. Like I'll be cold, I'll be sitting out, in the tree all day, and it's like I could just always do this. It's so fun to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, this is sort of anecdotal, but in my little farm in Ionia County, I'm part of a co-op, and we really did change deer hunting there without regulations. But during that APR period, I had the hottest, most exciting chasing going on that I have had in my Michigan hunting career. And
Same.
uh, I mean, it was off the charts. I'd just be like glowing,
Yeah.
beaming
I,
ear to ear. So it was just, yeah. So you experienced the same thing. It's
Oh, I mean, I rattled deer in. I grunted deer. It's like stuff I never would have tried in the past. I was like, even during gun season, which like, it's like, oh, it's gun season. Things are kind of they die down a little bit. I'm like, no, I'm headed out. I'm taking my bow out because we're in kind of the shotgun zone. I just, like to take my bow out. So I go out and I'm like, I'm just gonna kind of still hunt. It's like 10:30 in the morning, and I'm just gonna kind of work my way into this spot. And sure enough, I glass up just a huge, like 150-inch buck on public land, right? Like, wow, there's no way you can see me. I'm like, you know what? I'll try rattle. I'll just rattle. I have him with me. Like, I'm going to try it. And so I duck down. I can see him bedded, and he's probably 100 yards away. And I go to town. I'm hitting the ground. I'm crashing into trees. And he came in so quickly that I didn't have time to put my antlers down and grab my bow. And he was probably 20 yards away from me, coming straight at me. So of course I didn't shoot him because it happened too fast. But I'm looking back, thinking like I can't even believe that I'm hunting in Michigan right now. And it was in an APR zone. It was after a couple of years that it had been in place for that 4 and a side. And like you said, it was just. I mean, every time you'd come in from the woods, you have just a giant smile on your face.
Yeah, so it made a difference. That type of experience is why we as hunters need to take control of our, so the DNR can only they can't make you squeeze the trigger, right? So
Right.
they can't make you kill a yearling buck, and they can't make you shoot a doe. It's a hunter making those decisions and trying to do the right thing for their deer herd. And I tell you what, when I get to right about where we are right now, through November, basically, I don't have any desire to go anywhere else hunting
Yeah.
wise. I
Yeah.
really don't. I have so much fun here in
Same.
Michigan.
Yep.
So, and we don't have an APR anymore. So, and that has made a difference. But I've got a strong co-op. We've already changed the culture in our area, and we have some really good hunting. So,
Yeah.
and
We
I
do, and
control.
it's
I'm fortunate to control. So, I've got some 79 acres, so it's not big. It's not as big as a buck's home area, but I've got good habitat. I control how I hunt it, so I have deer moving all the way through November, which is
yeah.
great.
No, I love that. So, okay, so we have the issues, right? Some
Yeah.
issues that we're dealing
So yeah,
with.
it's still harvest. We're way behind, and we're losing hunters. So those are
And
yeah.
and so far that the idea that we would just simply allow people to shoot more does has not really had the impact that we've hoped, because like you said, less than 1% of people are shooting more than 4 does, for example, and that number probably is pretty small even for more than one doe, right, in a season.
Yep.
um okay, so changing a law that allows for it doesn't work, and I think a lot of people listening probably could have forecasted that. What is our way out? What's our path out? How should we move forward with this?
Well, there's two things from a regulation standpoint. Number one, I say hunters, let's take care of this ourselves.
Yep.
That's number one. But regulations can and do make a difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think the DNR taking positions on these things can and will make a difference too. So if we get to the regulatory area, there's two things we've been pushing. One won't be a surprise, I don't think, to anybody listening to this call. The other may be more new. So the first one is antler point restrictions, and we just did this trial in our CWD area, and what the DNR shows in their own charts is we changed the ratio. It was between 0.7 and 0.8 antlerless per antlered in those counties before the APR. During the APR study, it averaged 1.15 for all
Really?
3 years. And then they eliminated the antler point restriction. It went right back to where it had been prior to the study. And I was just looking at the numbers today, and they're just terrible. So, I mean, if we look at, so Montcalm had the most CWD in the state, or has the most detections in the state. They're only averaging 0.45 antlerless deer per antlered. And their deer densities are through the roof in Montcalm County. So that's a disaster. So here we've got the most CWD. Kent County has the second highest prevalence rates when they were testing enough to know anyway. They're only at 0.56. Ionia County, so Montcalm, Ionia, and Mecosta were our APR counties. And so I'll give you an idea where Ionia is. So it was doing so well during the study. It's at 0.58 antlerless per antler as of today. I mean, it's just fallen off the cliff. So those ratios are really important. And they're, and this is DNR data. You can look it up online yourself. There's no
FOIA request required.
No, you can, and that's a great thing about this harvest reporting thing. But the earlier years data is available from the DNR as well. I have it. It's well reported. So that's a huge factor. So APRs, it's not just, I guess the key thing there is it's not just protecting yearling bucks, although that's a key thing that it does. It protects the majority yearling bucks, allows most of the deer 2.5 and older to be harvested. But it also does lead to a better ratio and increased antlerless harvest. And the DNR has been a little bit frustrating, frankly, with the study. So we've got those great ratios, right? Well, and if you look at their data points that they use, there's also a very clear increase in antlerless harvest, just in terms of raw numbers. And but the DNR kept driving us crazy. Say, well, we're not 100% sure that it's actually increasing the antlerless harvest, and didn't find out till after the June meeting, which was frustrating that we didn't get this from them. But turns out that when they did this study, they had very wide confidence intervals. So For those of
Yep.
us who haven't been in a statistics class for a long time,
Mhm.
a confidence interval is the distance or the range of values that will be you're 95% confident the actual number falls in, and
Mhm.
it forms a bell curve. So the data they've been showing us is the most likely number, but the confidence interval is over 4,000 deer if you look at this study. So they couldn't even say, even though they thought it was 8,000 in the non-APR area, 11,000 in the APR area for the harvest, they couldn't even say for sure that there was any difference between the harvest in those two areas. So that's huge. And the really disappointing part about that is that's completely controllable. So they knew what their confidence interval was
What's
even
going on
before
with
the.
this? Why is this happening?
Yeah, they should have just surveyed. All the simple way that you narrow your confidence interval is you survey more people. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
And
what
we
you do.
can.
Yeah, it costs them a postage stamp or an email. I mean,
Mostly,
it's
yeah, an email. We have the app with like there's so many easy ways to do it. I literally just reported my buck on my phone, right? And
yeah.
like how easy it took 2 seconds. I know people are all sometimes get up in arms like giving away a hunting land space and stuff. We've even had some guests talk about that or been on other podcasts. But like, I mean, there are easy ways to get pure data that helps
Right.
us make the best game management decisions.
Now, and that's been something the NDA has been pushing for years. So, but we didn't get it till last year. So
Yeah.
during this experimental period, the way they were getting the data is just through the surveys, and hunters needed to respond to those surveys. So there's another area where hunters have some culpability in this thing. Um, but the DNR should have said, hey, wait a minute, 2018, we've got this big confidence interval. We can't be sure there's any difference between these two areas. Let's survey more people. That'd
Yeah.
be a really simple thing. And they didn't do it. And so then we find out in June of 23, prior to the NRC, or actually after the NRC meeting, that the reason they've been saying that didn't increase antlerless harvest was not that it most likely did, but their confidence interval issue. And the other interesting thing there is it was the first 2 years that the confidence intervals overlap, but because of the increased antlerless harvest and the widening gap between the two areas, those last 2 years of the study, there is no overlap. So there's clearly more going on in the APR county. So the data points there, the ratios are solid. The data points to the fact that antlerless harvest went up, and that's in Michigan. I think while we're getting better with letting the little bucks go, we are a long way from doing it with our antlerless harvest, and that's why I think APRs still are an important part of this. So,
Okay.
and
Yep.
one other data point is Pennsylvania did this 20 years ago. They
Mm-hmm.
had identical ratios to Michigan, or very similar ratios of antlerless to antlered. Um, they put in antler point restrictions 20 years ago, and now they're at 1.5 antlerless per antlered, while at the same time breaking lots of state records in their buck size, and they're third in the country in terms of buck harvest per square mile. So you can harvest more
You get
does
both
and have bigger deer and a
and
great
more.
buck harvest. So
Yeah.
it's a win-win thing. Again, I'll point to Pennsylvania there. So
And they're like you said, they're so similar. We have so many people on our podcast from Pennsylvania, and it's like their culture is so similar, their history, their numbers of hunters, it's so very similar to Michigan or even like Wisconsin. And it's like, man, we could be that. We could be that. You know.
yes, there's no question we can do that. It's changing hunters' minds, but it is also a regulatory thing. So APRs probably is not surprised a single person, but I wanted to there's data behind it too.
Yeah.
So it's not not just us. So APRs were, but we didn't, frankly, looking at the data, didn't think that was going to be enough in
Sure.
Michigan to get us where we needed to go. So back in January, the beauty of having this data is we knew we were screwed at the end of 2022, and we needed to come back with some recommendations. So APRs plus something else. So I got with our national group, Kip Adams in
Yep.
particular, Matt Ross, put our heads together. What's working in other places that could get our doe harvest up. And what they suggested is something that you could call it it's a change, would be a change to our combination license. So the terminology I'll use, although it's is earn a second buck. And so I want to explain that because everybody's heard about earn a buck in Wisconsin, and that got hunters hated that, and I don't blame them. I mean,
sure. I would be so frustrated if you get a giant buck walking out. It's like, I gotta fix you a doe
it's
first.
opening morning, especially if you're a gun hunter. With us bow hunters, we've got 6 weeks to try and get a doe down, so that's not quite as big a deal. But if you're a gun hunter on November 15th, the biggest buck of your life walks out, and you can't shoot it because you haven't shot a doe yet, I mean, that would infuriate. Just the thought that could happen would infuriate a lot of people. And so earn a buck, but I will say, it did make a huge difference in their antlerless to antlered ratios. So it worked from that perspective. So it made a difference in Wisconsin. But they had another problem with it, which is it also resulted in a lot of button bucks getting killed. So you can, I don't have those
shooting
numbers.
anything without antlers. You're like, boom,
It's opening morning. We're a minute into daylight. I'm shooting that little button buck or the first antlerless deer I see, so that if a buck shows up, I can take it.
And just for the record, for people listening, just because it's a button buck right away doesn't mean that it's doomed to be a small buck for the rest of its life. That's been debunked for a long time, and we'll get sometimes comments about that, or I'll hear that sometimes. And so just know that just because it's a button buck one year doesn't mean it can't be a world-class deer later on. That's
or a spike or a fork, or it's like, I'm gonna be culling deer. Well, it turns out you have no.
You got to cull the does, actually. Doe. Well, we had Dr. Grant Woods on maybe a couple of years ago now, and he's like, the way to actually cull is not through the bucks; it's through the does who actually pass on those genetics. And so, unless you can ask a doe about the fawns that's had over the last 8 years and how they turned out, you're going to have a hard time culling. But people still do it, and whatever. Right. But anyways, that didn't mean to detract.
Well, I will say that's another part of our unbalanced harvest problem. So a big difference in antler growth for a 1.5-year-old buck is when it's born. So most of the time when you see a spike buck in Michigan, that's a fawn that was born 30 days late. So especially in southern Michigan, because we get quite a few 6s and 8s that are 1.5 years in southern Michigan. Good growing conditions, good nutrition, if they're born on time. If you start seeing a lot of spikes, that's probably an indication you need to harvest more does and get your ratios in order, so that the does get bred their first time, their first heat. There's a lot of implications actually for Michigan and our deer herd there if we can have better ratios of bucks to does, so that just was listening to a good podcast with the Mississippi State folks and the research they're doing on rubs and scrapes and triggering of breeding. Turns out that bucks, mature bucks in particular, are the ones that synchronize. There's a relationship between mature does, mature bucks, and they synchronize each other breeding-wise through the use of rubs and scrapes. And so if you don't have very many mature bucks, you're going to have the does will be less synchronized in their breeding. They're less, if your ratios are off, they're less likely to be bred in their first heat. And that means their fawns will be born 30 days later. They don't. If you're in northern Michigan or the UP, that's really bad if they're born 30 days late, because they're not going to have the size, weight, and fat necessary to make it through even an average winter. And if we get a bad winter, those fawns, that doe has invested all that energy in raising that fawn, and then it dies because it was born 30 days later than it should have been. So that's a whole nother issue we could dive into, but we need those ratios to be in place, even in UP of Michigan. Even though we've got very low densities, you still want your ratios to be close. Antlered bucks to antlerless. It's important to the survival of the deer in the next winter.
So just to recap a second on, because this reminded me of a conversation I had with one of the leaders of somebody in a leadership position at the DNR, and I'll leave it at that. But their hope was that the APR zones, even though they took them away, would have changed the culture in those counties so much that people would be willing to shoot more does even without the regulations, as they were. And you're telling me, just to rewind back, you're telling me that actually just went right back to the pre-APR numbers. Okay, so I got that.
Yeah.
So they were not
Hope
right
is
about
not a
that.
strategy. That may have been their hope, but it's not a strategy.
Well, and government generally doesn't dictate culture, but again, that's something else too. So the other side of it is earn a second buck.
Yeah.
And
So
that is you
let's
shoot
talk about
one.
that.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
Yeah. So the idea there would be that before you could use your, and there's lots of ways you can specifically do it with your tags, but the idea is you couldn't shoot a second buck until you had harvested at least one doe. Um, this was first tried in West Virginia. It's now being used in Virginia. And what they found is it resulted in about a 14% increase in antlerless harvest. So if we take that plus APRs, now we're starting to get in the range of where we probably need to be. Even those two things together may not be the total answer. It's still up to us hunters to do the right thing, but it moves the needle. Those two
Yep.
things together move the needle in a significant way. I've reviewed it with a lot of hunters, and I don't get too many people. Once they understand, I'm talking about earn a second buck, they
Yeah.
don't get too worked up. So you're the gun. If you're just a gun hunter, November 15th, you see that big buck, you can take it. But then it's in your interest to shoot a doe pretty quick, right? So that if you have another opportunity, a buck, now you can do it. But now the other thing it does is most people don't have room in their freezer for more than 2 deer. So if you've got a buck and a doe, you might just say, well, at least you may not even harvest another buck.
Yeah.
But at least now our ratio is balanced, and you're incented to do it. And I do think to the point that DNR person was making, while it was a hope, I do think once people harvest a few does, it does get them over a hump, a mental hump. So that's a good thing. That's earn a second buck. I got a lot of positive feedback. Chad Stewart, our deer and elk biologist, knows the biologist that did this in West Virginia and Virginia, and he's been following that. Some of our Natural Resources Commission members have been made aware of it, and they are fond of that idea. But I don't think it does it by itself either. So we can't say APRs. We don't need APRs because we're going to earn a second buck.
It's kind of a combination of things, and there's also, I've always wondered about like an early antlerless season. You can go out with your bow and September 15 or something, and you get to shoot a doe. I know some states do that, or I have and I didn't know this was controversial, but like my controversial opinion, and people are going to they have already given me kind of the business for it, is like the youth season should be antlerless only. Like I said that, and like right. I heard a lot about it's like, well, my kids
get in trouble, yeah.
Yeah, but I'll say this in response. There are so many people. I'll give you a good example. The guy goes out shooting a 350 Legend in the lower part of Michigan, and with his kid who's like 4, right?
Right.
The buck steps out. He gets 3 or 4 shots on this deer, and I'm thinking, you're telling me a 4-year-old has it together to take 4 shots on a deer that, like, how much people take their child out to go on youth season? It's usually the dude that's hunting with the kid, and like he's taking the shot. So like, my thing with that is, if your kid wants to get into hunting, and I have a daughter, right? I take her hunting, and we do the whole thing. A lot of us do. But like, if you want to do a youth season and really give them a chance to shoot a deer, you could wipe out a lot of does that way, and they're still getting the experience. They're getting the venison. And like, your 4-year-old doesn't need to get a buck, right? Like, anyways, I know it's controversial. People give me the crap about that all the time, but I have a kid.
I'll tell you, I'll back it up to a degree. Now, as an NDA, we're not going to take a position on that.
Yeah, sure.
And for several reasons. Number one, it just isn't that many deer that are getting killed in the youth season, but it infuriates people because you'll see those pictures. All it takes is a few of them too, the little 4-year-old propped up next to a giant trophy buck with a rifle. It's like, yeah, right.
He didn't shoot a 300 Win Mag,
yeah.
at this deer. The kid would be blown out the back of the deer blind.
We might be exaggerating a little bit, but
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's pretty rare. But
Yeah.
there's a natural tendency, though, I think, for the adults to urge a kid to shoot a buck. So I think this is an adult thing. If they made me king and I could go back in time, I'd say that, the youth season should be antlerless, because I have never had a kid. I've had both my own kids and a number of other kids who have gotten first deer on my farm. I have never seen one that didn't get thrilled over shooting a doe. And if I did run across that kid, that I think would be a problem. That'd be a kid who's probably not going to be a hunter.
And they could probably grow up axe murderer. Who knows what kind of.
I don't know. So I have, so I agree with you to a degree, but it isn't, biologically, I don't think it's more just, and there's a certain jealousy, which I think is ugly also in some hunters about youth going out. As an NDA, I will, so I'll partially agree with you, but am I personally, or is the NDA going to take that on as a cause? No, it's just a mistake. It should have been antlerless from the start.
There's no going back now. And I say this, but last year I took my daughter out for the youth season, gave her a crossbow, right? And we're out, and man, we almost shot a nice 8 points. So like, what am I talking about? Like I'm definitely biased when it's my own kid, but I definitely see it. And even talking to my daughter, like you said, if she could shoot a doe and get me a Euro mount of its skull so she can put it in her room, like that would be the coolest thing that she could even imagine. So it's like,
right.
I don't know that all she cares is about going hunting and getting a deer. So, and she's already, we're planning, we're going to can this deer, we're going to, how are we going to do them? We'll sit in the tree stand or the deer blind, and we'll talk about all the ways that we're going to, prepare the meat. So it's shooting a buck is important for sure, but like you said, it's like they're just excited to go out.
And it's a good example where we hunters, whether or not the youth season is antlerless or not, we as fathers and mentors and things, we can encourage them to shoot does. We don't necessarily have to have a regulation that way.
Exactly.
And everybody's situation is different and everything else. I'm not going to give anybody a hard time whose kid shoots a big buck. That's awesome. I'm excited
for sure. Yep,
but
same.
But our ratios are way off. It was something on the order of 6 or 7 to 1 in the youth season. So the implications of that for the long term is bad. So we're trying to shift the culture so that people are more willing to harvest does. Because that's so important to managing deer. But how are we starting them off? Well, 6 or 7 to 1 of those harvests in the youth season are bucks. So it runs counter. But we don't need to change regulations. We as hunters just need to go out and teach our kids about the importance of doe harvest.
And I want to make a plug for how fun doe hunting is. Like, you just go shoot does. It's the most fun. We love to do it. Whether it's, Jared, one of our guys here, and actually Joe, both did some spot and stalk, in the corn with their bows and does. Like, it's so fun. It's just good, clean fun. So, it's a good duty and it helps. And there's like a sense of like I said, duty to do it. But at the same time, just do it. Like, it's great venison. It's about as much fun as you can have going out and just shooting does and hanging it with the boys or with your hunting, whatever it is. So there's a lot of that can be done. And
kids like action too, right?
Yeah.
You don't want them sitting forever in the blind waiting for a giant buck to show up, when you just had 20 does go by. So, they like
doe, learn how to shoot and do a blood trail and all, clean it. Like, you can do there's a lot of teaching that can be done pretty easily.
Yeah. So that's, again, we have a great opportunity as hunters in Michigan with our big deer herd to do the right thing, get our kids started in the right way. So, but that earn a second buck, I think if we put those two things together, we'll be pitching again next year with the Natural Resources Commission. They, for 2 years in a row, they apologized after they set deer regulations. So we just didn't have time. We didn't,
there's no excuse for that.
And no, it's like we're
do your
doing
job.
status quo. We had
Yeah.
Brian Frowley, their statistician. They asked him, well, if we don't change things in our harvest, what is how are we going to be in Michigan? And he said, well, we're in a world of hurt. And Chad Stewart has did a great job, our deer and elk biologist, at the meetings talking about how we've got to change that harvest. The Natural Resources Commission chose to do nothing. Nothing significant anyway. They did put the APR back on the second tag and the combination license for southern Michigan, but where they removed it. But that's not that's not going to move the needle.
No.
So here we've got a crisis going on, and they did nothing. So we'll be back pushing it again, trying to make a difference. And I'll add one more thing, which is really frustrating, and that is, so we have got this 1% of hunters that are shooting, maybe a little more than 1% that are shooting, significantly more than one doe. Mm-hmm. And the problem is most people don't have a place to put it in their freezer. So Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger has been a big and important place where you could take your deer and donate them and feel good about it. We harvested a doe, and now it's going to help feed the underprivileged in our community. Well, and this is frustrating because we have a board member on Sportsmen Against Hunger. Our board member for years was saying, well, you need to get on top of looking at testing this meat, and put a process in place, and the DNR did nothing about it. They put a new person in charge this year, and on September 15th, set a directive to all Sportsmen Against Hunger processors and said, you cannot process a deer, accept a deer, and distribute it that has not been tested if you're in a bovine tuberculosis county for bovine tuberculosis, or if you're in a CWD county has been tested and found negative for chronic wasting disease. And then they also did so that stopped them from taking deer. And they said, if the meat you've got, just hang on to, or throw it out if you run out of space in your freezer.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's horrible. And we found out we started getting calls from some of these processors. And then they also tested for lead, and they found, I think, somewhere in 33% of the meat that there were microparticles of lead. And that also got them freaked out. Now, hunters have been shooting deer for how long with lead projectiles and eating it, and nobody's ever found any negative impact on hunters. But given Flint water crisis, you tell a state bureaucrat anything about people ingesting lead.
That's a hot button.
It freaks them out. So now they want to test for both of those things, and so we are not against testing per se. We're against the timing of this. If they come out in February and said, "Hey, we want to start testing," they could have put funds to it. They could have put a process in place. Great, do whatever you think you need to do. But we're struggling with that, and they're starting to lose processors. They're also not compensating processors enough for the extra work they're asking them to do. So we're actually working right now, and it's not looking good, but we're trying to get some supplemental funds from the legislature to help compensate these processors more and start putting refrigerated trailers on site so that at least they can take deer and store them till tests come back. So that's what we're working on. If that doesn't happen this year, we'll obviously be working hard for that next year. We simply have to have that. If we're going to get enough does harvested, hunters are not going to shoot does and leave them lay. People that just goes against everything we're about. So we've got to come up with a way. We do have other branches that have been working in counties where there aren't Sportsmen Against Hunger processors, where we are continuing to work with those processors. And so there's still ways to donate deer, but they really put a wrench in things at a critical point in the season.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the Michigan Sportsmen Against Hunger is cool. Like, even you go to their website, you can see exactly where you can find a processor where you just drop your deer off. They take care of it. It's like the easiest thing. Now, I eat them all. or I make them for somebody else. But should I get to the point where, we were talking ahead of time where we both did a moose hunt this year, and I think I last checked, I had like 300 and 400 pounds of moose meat, a couple other deer. I've got turkeys and chickens, and so I'm loaded. But at the same time, it's like I think I could fit at least 2 deer in that freezer somewhere. If you grind them right and you make the bags, if you do your
Right.
grinding yourself and you form those bags of ground the right way, you can Tetris it kind of in your freezer a little bit. But no, that's fantastic. We're coming up on time, but
Yep.
for people who are listening that want to either get involved, help raise their voice, kind of support the mission, like what's the best way we can do that?
Become a member of the National Deer Association. You can actually do it for free. If you go to deerassociation.com, we've got a free basic membership that you can sign up for. There's also a next level of membership, $35 a year. But there's strength in numbers. I mean, one of the first questions that legislators will ask me when I go and talk to them is, well, how many members do you have?
Yep.
And so, and as even a non-paying member, just that real basic level, you're going to be getting weekly emails from the NDA on deer issues, deer science. So it's pretty cool to get that stuff distributed. If there are legislative things going on, you'll be hearing about it, getting those updates. So becoming a member of the National Deer Association, deerassociation.com is a great place to go. If you're on Facebook, we do have a Facebook page for the Michigan State Council of the National Deer Association. Our branches each will have, so, Montcalm County branch, all the various branches will have Facebook pages as well. So you can get on those Facebook pages and get involved that way. Attend a banquet and, spend some money, win a gun, win some things, spend some money and support the cause that way, and then volunteer. So our volunteers do a number of things. And it depends on what lights your fire. If you want to get involved with helping kids get into hunting, we have youth hunts and military youth hunts. We do hunts for disabled veterans. If those are the types of things that get you fired up. If you want to help on the advocacy side with your state legislators and with the DNR and going to NRC meetings, that's another way you can help. There's start a deer cooperative in your area. Again, the single biggest thing you can do to improve your hunting is just go out and talk to your neighbors. Put a barbecue together. Just talk about, share pictures, talk about your deer hunting goals, what you want to accomplish. All of a sudden you get to know your neighbors and, hey, that person won't shoot them either if I let them go. So that's great. Don't be confrontational, be friendly, respectful, regardless of their way of doing it. But those things all can make a big difference. Deer co-ops, deer association branches, memberships, volunteering, and take a new hunter hunting. There's still time this year. So if you've got a friend who's expressed any interest at all, offer to take them out. I've had friends that initially don't even, say, well, I really don't think I could shoot at anything, but I would like to come along. Bring them along. Introduce them. Even if they never become a hunter, they're going to have a much more positive impression of hunters, seeing what it's actually like and what we experience. So we have time to do that. We have time to go out and shoot a doe or more, doe or 2 or 3 or 4. We've got time to take a hunter hunting. Let's go do it.
Yeah, and I'll say, literally in the time that you were talking about the NDA and how easy it is to sign up for free, I signed up that easily for free. I mean, it took me 10 seconds to do. So I'm on the list. You start there, you become a paying member and everything else. So just a plug to say, it's very easy. So everybody, thanks for listening. Erik, thank you for joining and just giving us an update. We like to do these fairly regularly with you. We'll probably do it again next year, just to get a pulse on what's going on in our woods, what we need to think about. Oh, my dog's behind me. Really making a scene.
We may need to do a moose hunting podcast too.
I would love that. Yeah, we really should, because we almost went exact opposite directions for our hunts. You were in Newfoundland and I was all the way in BC, so very different types of moose, but I mean, moose hunting is awesome. That was about as
I
much
want to
fun
do
as
it
you can
again.
have.
I absolutely want to do it again.
Same, yeah.
All
All
right.
right, well, everybody go check NDA out. Just get involved. If you have any questions, reach out to us, reach out to NDA directly. We're happy to put you in touch. However we can help do this. This is, like Erik said, something that, our legislatures have an important role in, but the most important people in this process are the people on the ground. So hunters and the decisions we make, the way that we conduct ourselves. So any way we can help, let us know. And again, thanks for listening in this week.
Thank you so much.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode. We really do appreciate it. If you want to go on to any kind of social media platform, give us a like, share, subscribe. It'd really help us out, keeps the train rolling. And if you guys really like what you're listening here, give us a 5-star
Either way,
review.
even if you don't like it.
Even if you don't like
review.
it, 5 stars.
That'd
Helps
be
everyone
cool.
out.
We'll see you out there.